Welcome to Table Talk, the podcast series where clinical experience informs optimal human function. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Romy, and our guest today is Chris Williams, the founder of Pro Clinic in Surrey and Deputy Unit Leader of Osteopathic Technique at the UCO in London. Chris is here today to discuss his experience teaching osteopathy as well as working in professional motorsport.
And how this fed his current healthcare practices. So, welcome.
Morning.
So start us off, I'd just like to talk about what drew you into osteopathy as a career in the first place?
It's weird, actually. When I was at school, I wanted to be an architect. Sadly, where I went to school, I got distracted in the sixth form. We had girls in the sixth form, and it kind of just distracted me a little bit from my studies. And I didn't get my grades for architectural college, so I went off to Leicester, De Montfort University, or as it was nicknamed, Del Monte, because they'll take anyone, or say yes to anyone. And I did a physics and business degree for the first 2 years. And during that degree, it was tough, but actually, I felt it was tough at the time. So after 2 years, I thought this isn't for me, so I went back to school, A-level college, and did biology and chemistry A-level with a view to doing this. And the reason I chose this was actually my mum and dad used to go and see a chiropractor, and then they'd come home and I'd go, give us a massage, Chris. And I was like, I had no idea what I was doing, and they were going, it feels really good. What about a career in that? And I thought, okay, well, that's something. I was a bit didn't really know what I wanted to do. Chiropractic college was in Bournemouth, and Bournemouth didn't really interest me as a place to go to uni, so so I ended up looking at places in London, and obviously I saw the BSO. Then my parents then switched to an osteopath they were seeing, and was set. The cast was set then for the BSO. Just like this location, we were in Trafalgar Square at that point back in 1995. 21-year-old in London. It was interesting.
That's a really interesting way of coming into the profession.
Yeah, it wasn't it wasn't something I woke up at the age of 4 going, I really need to be an osteopath. It just it was just one of those things, actually, and I've always been, I like interacting with people, and I think it was one of those things of, okay, where can I interact with people, get to know people, and then also help people. I've always been someone that tries to help people. And it just seemed a natural progression, really. And actually, when we started studying with Chris Thomas, who's my boss here, but we graduated in the same year, and it was intense. And actually, looking back at my previous degree, that was really easy. Looking in hindsight, it's funny, at the time you think it's really hard, but actually looking back, it was really, really easy compared to this. But because I enjoyed this didn't seem whilst it was hard work, it didn't seem a chore to do it, because it was interesting.
That's wonderful. That's definitely how I feel. I get lost in the knowledge and the learning, but it's a really, really fun journey. And can you tell us a little bit more about your journey since qualifying as an osteopath?
Yeah, so I came back to teach in 99. I qualified in 99. I then set up practice and worked for the osteopath, actually, that initially directed me towards BSO. I worked with him for a while, and I worked with an old tutor from here for a while. And then I also started a practice, or took over a practice at the BBC Television Centre. And I came back to teach, I think it was around 2001. I was set to go to Australia. Personal plans changed, and so sadly, I lost my dad, so I decided to stay here. So plans changed. So I came back to teach in 2001 or 2000. Did an equine and canine course, which is now part of us now, with Stuart McGregor up at Wantage, and then life took a weird change. I met my ex-wife, and then we settled down, had kids. At that juncture, I stopped teaching. I gave up my osteopathy. I thought with the kids I needed a little bit more stability income-wise. for whatever reason. So I went into the world of recruitment and joined Michael Page in City, and then I joined a small firm out in Reigate, and then ended up growing that business and becoming director and shareholder and what have you. And people will go, why? It's got nothing in common with osteopathy, but actually it has. It's got a lot in common, actually, recruitment, because you're talking to people, getting to know people. With our case histories, we get information out of people they might not want to share, and that's what you do with a job search and CV, etc. And it's about building relationships, and building relationships very, very quickly, at a very good level, very, very quickly. And there's a degree of manipulation in both as well. So yeah, there's a lot of synergy between osteopathy and recruitment. And then late 2011, I kind of took on a house project, and I decided that I was doing about 70 hours in the office a week. Members of staff weren't pulling their weight. One of my business partners wasn't pulling their weight. So I thought, I've had this. So I sold my shares, came back to the profession, went through all the kind of GIOSC re-registration, etc. And which is why if you look at GIOSC, it says I registered in 2012. Some reason they won't give me my 1999 credibility. And then came back teaching in that September or August, back here. And do you know what? I haven't regretted the move back, and actually I'm better for the diversity that I did in terms of the time and recruitment and everything, because it really taught me to appreciate what I did have. So.
Yeah, but there's some skills that you managed to transfer back across from recruitment that you didn't have in osteopathy before.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things I learned in recruitment, well, twofold. One was how to run a business properly. And the second one is, if you spend too long in recruitment, you can become a kind of a slight cynic when people say stuff, and people they'll tell you one thing and you can see straight through it. And I guess from that perspective, that's kind of really kind of taught me to be reflective in my practice. So, when a patient says to me, "Oh yeah, no, it's all good," and it's not, you'll get that sort of almost sixth sense of actually there's something underlying here that I need to investigate further, or it just teaches you to kind of be to question yourself. And I don't think you can question yourself in two ways. You can question yourself in a negative way, or you can question yourself in a positive way. Personally, I think you can question yourself. Both of those are positive, because I think if you question yourself in a negative way, you're challenging yourself to want to find that solution, want to answer, or you're questioning yourself saying, actually, yeah, you did that really well. But both those have equal place, and I think that's what it taught me, is to really kind of ensure that I'm doing the best job I can.
And so when you came back into osteopathy, like you said, you had to go through the whole process again to kind of not re-qualify, but sort of become...
re-registered.
Yeah, re-registered, I guess.
Yeah.
And how was that process for you in terms of, I guess, becoming an osteopath again? And how did you have to work at sort of sensitivity again and sort of developing those kind of things?
To be honest, it was a bit like going back to like a duck to water. It was kind of, I had to do 150 hours of CPD at the time, which took its form of various different things, such as going back into clinic, observing, that sort of stuff. I'd always kept my skills up. I hadn't totally lost my skills, but also I have to say some of the stuff, for example, with technique, patient care, getting a little plug in there. I think because I learnt it correctly the first time, it wasn't something that I necessarily, obviously I had to repolish my skills, but actually the core elements were already embedded. And I think from that perspective, it made my journey back far easier.
Yeah, going back to your experience of setting up and working in the BBC.
Yeah.
What kind of common injuries did you encounter when working in that environment?
To be honest, you had a kind of split really between a lot of desk-based people and a lot of camera folk as well. So it was carrying heavy camera equipment and that sort of stuff.
Always on one side, I assume, as well.
Yeah, it was. And actually, funny enough, one of the patients there who was a cameraman ended up coming here. And when I came back to teach in 2012, he was a 4th year student here. And I was taking the register and I went, I recognise that name. And I said, you worked at the BBC? He said, yeah. And I came and saw you, and you were the reason I then went down this route. And he was like, well, that's quite, yeah. Yeah, so that was a kind of quite overwhelming, really. I was like, oh, I've had a positive impact from that. But yeah.
That's wonderful. I guess you see things come full circle.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
Like you said, it was kind of a duck to water transition,
Yeah.
and that was sort of a sign to maybe encourage you to pursue that. So,
and it's something I haven't regretted, actually, to be fair.
That's wonderful.
So.
And we also know that you work in professional motorsport as an osteopath.
Yes.
And I remember you saying one day that it was a very hard industry to get into. And so how did you go about networking your way in and making those connections?
So when I initially qualified back in '99, I was a naive 20-something-year-old. What was I? 25-year-old. I started writing, and at that time, actually, funny enough, I actually treated the owner of, or the head of British American Tobacco, which at the time had a British American racing team, Formula One team. He very kindly invited me down to his yacht for the Monaco Grand Prix, and watched it on there. I went down with a friend of mine, and had a great weekend. And I thought, oh, great, this is it, I'm in. And then nothing came of it. And I wrote to all the F1 teams at the time, as you naively do. Hi, I'm newly qualified, and didn't hear really anything apart from thanks, but no thanks. So after all the TBNT letters, I kind of just put a pin in it really, and it was always something that I wanted to do. And then when I came back to profession, I started treating a friend of mine, who was a professional driver. He was not circuit, he was more drift. And then I just started treating a friend of his. And then it just so happened I was treating someone, and we got talking about motorsport, and I said, do you know what, I love it, I'm a frustrated driver, I really wish I should have pursued more and stuff like that. And then he said, oh, you need to talk to John, Ted, whose name is John. Logically, you need to speak to Ted, have a word with him. So I got introduced to Ted, and Ted said, sure, no problem, I'll introduce you to John, another John, who was at Aston Martin Racing, and that was a chap called John Calamari, and had an interview with him, and then started working. And the first race I ever went to for Aston was at Texas, Circuit of the Americas. He was having his first child, so he said, look, can you cover me? And got me up to speed as to what we needed to do. And that was the first race I ever did, and that was a 6-hour race looking after 4 cars, I think it was. So 4 cars on average, probably anywhere between 8 and 12 drivers. It was beltingly hot. It was about 60 degrees humidity. It was awesome.
What conditions to be in? That's insane.
Yeah, and it's so the role. I did obviously nutrition online, some online sort of nutrition courses. I did a strength and conditioning course as well. So the role kind of evolved rather from, it's not purely kind of hands-on treatment necessarily. There's a whole kind of multi-facet to it. There's sort of making sure they're eating the right foods, the right hydration. Obviously, if they need anything, you provide treatment or support from that perspective. It's also warm-ups, both physical and mental, getting them kind of reflex ready. But then you put your PA hat on, and your PA hat on means you're responsible for all their kit, making sure all their helmets, the earpieces, balaclavas, gloves, race suits are all where they need to be. And then you then put your even more of a PA hat on, where you then have to go, right, we need to be at a driver briefing, or we need to be at a autograph session. Plus also, if you miss the autograph session or even a minute late, it's €1,000 fine straight off the bat. So there's added input there from the team principal going, this needs to run smoothly. And then on top of that, you're also looking after the team, making sure all the team have got drinks and all that sort of stuff. So you end up, certainly with Aston, I think we had however many drivers, but then 70 in the team, so mechanics and engineers. So you have to learn all their names very quickly. But also, if you're walking around a garage and there's a piece of litter, you pick it up. Or if something comes in, the car's been smashed up and they need bits, bobs, you help out. So you're not purely there in an osteopathic perspective. You are there as part of a massive engine that needs all these little individual cogs to all pull in the same direction. So it's intense, but it's good.
Wow, you're really thrust right into the deep end and become this integral pillar of the team straight off the bat, even off the first race. That's just must have been madness. It
is, and also during the race or any kind of practice, when the moment the cars are on track, you've got your earphones on, you're listening to the car, you're preempting what's going to happen as well. So you're involved with the driver changes, whether they've got their kit ready to get in the car, their little seat insert. You're making sure the driver getting out, you take all their stuff, give them a drink. So you're listening intently for 6 hours, if it's a 6-hour race, over 4 cars. So you've got 4 sets of engineers, 4 sets of drivers all talking to each other, and you're trying to differentiate who's having an issue, who's not. So it's good fun. It's good fun.
It must be really fulfilling to be a part of a team, because you think that being an osteopath or a healthcare practitioner in that kind of measure is quite a solitary profession, and so being part of that must be a really nice way to balance it.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. I think the kind of historic practice working on your own, you are very much working on your own. Yes, you see people every half hour, or the old days we used to go back to back with half-hour slots. You see someone different for every half hour, but there's no continuity. The moment they've gone, you've got a new person, and you're probably even having the same conversation with that individual. Hi, how are you? Yeah, how's your day going? How's the week? Good weekend? It's a bit like going to the hairdressers. Oh, going anywhere nice on holiday. So actually, as being part of a team, there is that kind of conversation. You'll drop off there, and then you'll pick up 5 minutes later, or so it is really nice to be part of a team. And got to see some amazing parts of the world as well.
I can imagine.
Well, yeah, I guess so. You've gained a whole load of skills that deal with managing people a lot as well. So, as a founder of your clinic, what were some of the challenges that you faced with setting that up, and also some of the skills that you've transferred across and all these different facets that have enabled you to do that?
I think one of the biggest things you need when you're starting a practice is motivation. Okay, and it's all very easy to get bogged down in the motivation of I need to earn money. And we used to have an expression in recruitment is the moment you chase money, you won't have it. Don't chase the money, basically, but do your job. And when I first set back up, I was very fortunate. There was a little farm shop area down close to home, and I got a little room in one of the barns there, and it was lovely. Really nice setting. Got on really well with the owner of the farm and the manager of the farm, and the farm shop was going through its own kind of evolution as well. And so I leafleted the whole area, because it was a fresh clinic. Leafleted the whole area, sat back and went, right, it's going to ring. And it didn't. I'm like, oh. So fortunately at that time I was obviously teaching here for a couple of days a week, and also I was working back with the original osteopath I worked with when I first qualified. So I had income to kind of tide me over, and I had the house build that was kind of going on in the background. So I was busy, but it was also one of those things where you're sitting there going, I'm paying rent for this place and I've got nothing coming in from that one place. Fortunately, the rent was, I think it was something like 230 quid a month. So it's nothing, right? It's nothing. But I have to say, it seems like nothing, but when you've got nothing paying that, you going, well, hang on a minute. So yeah, so it does put a bit of pressure on you, but then slowly and surely it started to build up, and then I took a bigger space. Why I took a bigger space? Because I kind of wanted to grow the practice, and I wanted to take other people on. But the problem I had, and this is the issue with running a recruitment business, an osteopathic business, is people are if they come to see you and they trust you, and then you suddenly turn around and say, oh, by the way, I've got an associate, and this is probably, you've got to be quite thick-skinned as an associate, because having been in that position twice now, where I've worked for someone who's got an established practice, there will be patients that come in and go, oh, I'm only seeing you because so-and-so's busy. So automatically you're starting from a negative perspective as far as they're concerned. They feel that the principal is the person they want and you're the second choice. So automatically you've got a hill to overcome. And if you're slightly sensitive, which I guess we all are to varying degrees, you do take it personally, and it's a question of trying to get over that. So, and I kind of started to look at other practitioners, osteopathic practitioners, but everyone was going, well, actually, do you know what, Chris, I'm going to wait. I'll wait and see you. Well, it's not going to be for 3 weeks. It's fine. I'll wait. So then you kind of think, I thought, well, okay, well, I'll take someone else on from another profession. And again, whilst, okay, you're not necessarily competing for patients necessarily from that perspective, you are entrusting someone with your brand. And it's a very, I don't know, maybe I'm a bit particular, but I want to portray my brand in the correct way. And if someone has a negative feeling about someone that's happened in my practice, then that's going to reflect on me, whether it's me who's initiated it or sort of guilty by association. So I guess from that perspective, I never really looked down that route. And I know colleagues of mine have grown very big, successful practices. I guess from my perspective, I think with the teaching, the practice, the motorsport family, it was just too much to try and think of it anymore. But then, having said that, I have started a number of side businesses, so I don't quite know whether that argument stands up.
One of those people.
Yeah, actually, my mind never... Actually, a patient said to me yesterday, she said, because I said, I'm looking at a new business opportunity. She said, you never switch off, do you? I was like, well, yeah, I do, but I feel guilty if I do. And she's like, yeah, but it's not a question of just switching off. Even when you're sitting on holiday, you're thinking about something else, aren't you? I'm like, yeah. But, yeah.
At the same time, you're constantly adding more strings to your bow. And as you said, a lot of things can feed each other.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, I probably said to you guys, I don't know, but, certainly this introduction to this first year currently, we've said, all your tutors are qualified. We should be able to answer your questions. We should, and that's a big word because we are. I always say it. By no means are we the finished article. And I mean, I've been qualified 22 years. But the moment I think I'm the finished article, then personally I'll go and do something else because I think it's a constantly evolving target. I don't think we ever get to end point. And I think even when I'm pushing up daisies, I'll still be kind of trying to develop. But, yeah.
And you mentioned that working in recruitment for that period helped you to be a better business owner. And so how did that, what skills did you take into into osteopathy after that in terms of business?
Resilience. Okay. I think in recruitment, and I kind of, part of me thinks everybody should go and do a job in recruitment, because I remember ringing someone up, and two people actually. I'll give it two examples. I rang one company, and it was I used to recruit in accounting and finance, and I rang this accountancy firm, and she said, "Who's calling?" I said, "That's so and so from my company." "No, not interested, you're a recruitment firm." And automatically she's gone on the defensive and just totally blocked me off. And I went, "Oh, that's a shame." She went, "Why?" I went, "Well, I'm a director of the firm, we were looking for a new set of accountants to look after." "Oh, okay, well, no, sorry, too late." So it teaches you how to, I guess, be very wary of your first impression. And secondly, I remember talking to a chap, and he was a candidate, and he went, "Just find me a job." And I went, "Okay, well, we're not a job centre, we're a recruitment firm, and we will work with you to..." "Oh, no, you're pond life. You're no better than an amoeba." And you kind of go, "Okay, fine." That's your understanding and your feeling, but obviously you've come to us because we're professionals in order. Anyway, it was just amazing how little people thought of you when you're in that role. And actually, and I used to say, "Do you know what? Actually, I'm a qualified osteopath, and I'm having a slight career change at the moment." And automatically that kind of changed their opinion. And I guess taking that resilience and not taking no for an answer when you want to achieve something, to grow your business or do something with your business, I think that tenacity and resilience was something that was very transferable.
Nice. And referring back to you becoming a father.
Yes.
Has that actually changed your approach to treating patients anyway?
Yeah, I think it has. When I first became, knowingly I was a father, I still haven't had the knock at the door yet, but yeah, I think it has, because I think, do you know what, the stresses and the demands on your time that parenthood gives you, and it's just something that you don't necessarily get unless you are. And I think possibly when I stopped initially, I think naivety was there. I think I was only 30, I think, when I had my daughter. Up until then I was still like a 28, late 20s kind of, okay, yeah, I was married, but there wasn't that kind of responsibility, and I think my empathy for some parents were like, "Well, your choice, you have kids, stop moaning." But actually, do you know what? Having had children, you kind of go, "Wow, actually," and I look back on my parents and go, "God, I used to think you knew it all, but actually you were just winging it," and I think it does change your perception, both in terms of outlook for what you want to achieve, but also I think when a patient comes in, and part of our process is not only the treatment that we actually administer, it's our ability to talk and find that kind of, it's often an unload for the patient to talk to us, because they don't necessarily get that interaction, because 9 times out of 10 someone they're talking to is either a work colleague or a friend and knows the personal stuff. It does get very interesting when you treat husband and wives, and one offloads something about their husband, and then later that week the husband comes in and offloads exactly the same conversation, but from his perspective, about their partner. So you
had loads of experience with that as well, treating people as well. It's so funny.
Yeah, and it's brilliant, and you kind of sit back and go, and actually there was a funny story. I'll rephrase that. It wasn't that funny. There was a story where I was working at these two different practices, and the practices were about 8 miles apart. And this gentleman came in to one practice on the Monday, and he said, "Look, can you look at my shoulder?" And I think I might have shown you guys the slides. and he'd had an accident where he'd been taken out on a roundabout by a white van that apparently just drove straight onto the roundabout and killed him. Not killed him. It killed him at the scene. He actually stopped. His heart stopped, and they resuscitated him. And it was the van's fault. The van just drove straight out onto the roundabout and hit him. About 4 days later, at my other practice, I treated the van driver. And he was telling me about how the cyclist came straight out on the same roundabout and he hit him. And it's just very interesting to get the sort of polarity in terms of argument. Yeah, it's cool. So going back to your question, yes, I think being a father and a parent does help, because you start to understand people's choices, you start to understand their stresses that might not necessarily be particularly evident.
And coming back to how, I guess, being an osteopath is also being an advocate and a listening ear, how do you go about sort of protecting yourself emotionally from what you might encounter in day-to-day practice?
That's a very good question. So I think initially when I first qualified, I think it was very easy to get bogged down with it. And I think you kind of take a lot on that you might not necessarily want to take on or should take on. I think for me, life experiences, I've had, sadly lost my brother at a very early age, and then my dad when he was quite young. And then obviously having gone through the divorce as well, without this kind of sounding like get the violin out. But I think from that perspective, I read a lot about mental strength and learning to know what I should take on and what I shouldn't take on. And I think that resilience is kind of something that for example, when I wasn't particularly, my divorce wasn't particularly easy, and somebody said to me, "Oh, have you taken tablets and antidepressants?" And I was like, "No, nothing wrong with that. That's if people want to take that." But for me, it was about, okay, I need to get to the cause. I need to get to the problem of why I'm feeling like this, and then deal with that. And I think, in answer to your question, it's about developing your own mental strength in order to deal with that, rather than letting it become all-encompassing. So now I think I play sport regularly. I've got a nice friend network, great partner, and it's just all about making sure that I look after myself and take that time. And if you do have someone, you've got the relevant that you're worrying about, you do have the relevant course routes you can go. But I think you need to start exercising that mental strength, and I do it through various different things, including meditation and stuff like that. So yeah.
Thank you for that.
Sorry.
With developing mental strength, a lot of that comes through experience.
Yeah.
But have you got any recommendations for books or practices that you do, something like meditation that you?
Yeah. So interesting enough, actually, I did also a counselling course. I can't remember which level it was, level 3 or level 4, to become a counsellor. Funny enough, whilst I was going through the divorce, actually, which was interesting, because I was one of 14 in the class, but I was the only man. And going through a divorce at that time and being in that environment was quite an interesting dynamic, actually. But actually something that was very beneficial, because you could see kind of other sides to stories or opinions, but also you could see sort of reinforcement of your thought process as well. So it was really cool. But in terms of so I had a patient basically that he came in, and he was quite a big lad, and he kept getting in fights and road rage, and had a slight axe wound where someone had hit him with an axe, and he seemed really stressed. I said, just out of curiosity, have you ever meditated? And you were expecting him to use an expletive to tell me somewhere to go. And he went, no. Anyway, I saw him about 3 months later, and he went, do you know what? I haven't tooted the horn, I haven't got aggressive with anyone, it's changed my life. I was like, wow, brilliant. So I use meditation, various apps on the phone. I read 3 books when I was at the time I needed them. One was the Book of Joy, which was a meeting between Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama, which was held in India, I think, and they sat down for 7 days and discussed various questions. It's not about necessarily about religion. It's about perceptions and stuff like that. That was really interesting. The Chimp Paradox. Can't remember who that's written by.
It's a fantastic book.
Yeah.
Something Cox, I think it's one of the.
Yeah, I think it might be.
Yeah.
And it's all about sort of 3 parts of your brain and how you react to things. And actually, if someone cuts you up, don't get angry, because you'll get angry, they'll get angry. Then you'll ruin your day. You'll get to work and someone will go, "You're all right, Chris." "No, someone cut me up." And then your colleague will go, "Well, don't worry about it." And then you'll go, "Well, I'm going to get angry because why aren't they backing me up? They should be backing me up." And you've ruined your whole day. And actually, do you know what? You weren't late, or you might be a minute late, but think about it. Actually, they could be on their way to the hospital appointment because they're just about to, their other half's just about to have a baby or whatever it might be. So it just teaches you to reframe things. And the third one was a book called Attached, which is all about attachment theory. And it looks at 3 different attachment theories. So it's things such as, it's gone now, stable, avoidant, and anxious. And basically, a lot of stable people tend to be in stable relationships, but a lot of anxious and avoidant tend to kind of pair up together, and you're basically like north and south pole on a magnet. The more you need something if you're anxious, the more it will push the avoidant away, and the more the avoidant goes away, the more the anxious person needs it. So you end up this lovely kind of dance where you're just getting further and further apart. So it's not necessarily purely about relationships, as in a partner, marital relationship. It's also about how you interact with people, and the question that actually, I'm asking you a question, you might feel I'm being needy, but actually I'm asking it because all I need is a little bit of reassurance, and it's how you deal with those types of people. So those are the 3 that I found really quite interesting.
And meet people somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know what I mean? And that's the thing. And they actually use an example where there used to be a TV program called the Round the World Race, where couples used to go around the world and have to be in a certain place by a certain time, and if they didn't, and this couple were leading, and I think there was like an abseil or a bungee jump or something like that, and the wife wasn't very happy about doing it, and the husband was just like, "Just get on and do it." And the more she required his support, the more frustrated he got and pushed her away. So it ended up that they got to do this one bit, and actually because they were so poles apart on how they needed to succeed, it actually cost them the win of the whole thing. And actually all she needed was, "Do you know what, we're going to be all right, hold your hand, off we go." And actually that would have just deflated the situation totally.
Is that something that you saw after you read the book, or did you read the book after that and then recognise that?
No, this was referenced in the book.
Referenced okay, yeah.
This was referenced in the book, but actually then you go back and go, "Oh my goodness, that's me and them," or that's and you then kind of be reflective about every relationship that you've had or interaction you've had, and you've gone, "Wow, okay, well maybe that's why that person I perceived rude in Starbucks wasn't actually being rude. Maybe I'd given off the vibe that they were, or whatever." So you do, but you've also got, there's a caveat there, you've also got not overthink things far too much.
It's true that reading these kind of books can definitely make you completely deconstruct everything. And
you never go out.
Yeah. But we will put links for those books below the podcast so people can check them out. But thank you for answering that in such a deep way. Coming back to your UCO life, how has being a technique tutor informed your personal practice outside of the UCO?
Do you know what it does? And I think part of our responsibility as osteopaths is to educate our patients. And I think it's like anything. If you're told something, even when you're at school or by parents or aunts and uncles or whatever, if if you're told something but you don't necessarily understand the rationale behind it, you'll do it but not really knowing why. And then if something changes, you don't really have an avenue to go down. And I think being a tutor, certainly from a technique perspective, and how we need to blend our message for the students, it's not purely about doing the technique, it's about the communication, it's about the anatomy, it's about the function and all that sort of stuff. But I think by teaching that, it means that I try and educate my patients. So I've got a little skeleton in my room called Stan, and Stan comes out fairly often, and I'm explaining what I'm doing to the patient, so the patient can see what they're doing and understand that actually, if they constantly do A, then that is then, because of the anatomy, it's going to create a problem B. So I think it's critical in terms of being able to find, and it's also being able to find that commonality, because students, like in recruitment, everyone has different interests, different levels, and you know, I know some of the students take the mickey out of me for analogies, but again, the reason I use analogies is to try and find that kind of level of understanding that they can relate to, because the moment you try and expose something or explain something that they don't relate to, you're on a lost cause. You've got to find that kind of common ground.
Nice. Yeah, reflecting. Actually, talking about your current practice a little bit more.
Yeah.
How do you avoid becoming stale in your practice? Like in order to have the optimal effect on patients and stay relevant.
Yeah, I think. Do you know what? I think if I were to work 5 or 6 days in practice, then I would probably have the tendency to do that. I think because I've got the balance of teaching here and in practice, I don't think I ever have that now, because it's a day in practice rather than it's a day in practice. So it kind of gives me that every time I come in on a Monday, and I've moved the practice home now, so when I say come in, I mean walk down my stairs. It means that it's different to the bulk of my work a week. So actually, that by definition means that it's an exciting, different thing anyway. And I think with the teaching and the interaction with other colleagues and the discussions that we have in course team and or in the office upstairs, there is that constant challenge, and I like to see that constant challenge then evolve into my practice. And I think the danger with what we do, and you alluded to the fact about being in a room isolated in practice, I think the danger of that is that you don't keep yourself fresh, you don't challenge yourself, because you're kind of in your own little kind of shell, and you're not really having that interaction. Whereas actually, do you know what, I think we share patients upstairs, where we discuss, I had this patient or I had that patient, and oh wow, and you start to really, it just sharpens your focus. So I don't think personally, with the balance I've got, I don't think everyday practice will ever go stale, because it will always be this kind of it's a different day, you know. Okay, there are days where you look at the patient list and think, okay, we obviously welcome our patients with open arms. Some you will have a better relationship with than others. That's unfortunately human nature, but it's about welcoming each of those with open arms. And I think if you do feel that some patients are more challenging than others, think about why. And I think that's the biggest thing I like, is you might look at it and go, oh, okay, but then you think, actually, hang on, why am I framing it like that? And without sort of being too kind of Freudian, because that's not where I'm going, but I remember speaking to a counsellor once, and we were talking about something, and I can't remember what we were talking about. We were talking about someone on a bike, and they went, oh, did you think about an overweight person on a bike because you're carrying luggage and baggage, and it's all the baggage about your journey? I was like, no, it was purely because there was someone on a bike, and it's kind of like sometimes you don't need to overthink it. And I think you can always get too carried away with it. Anyway.
I can see how your counselling course definitely can fuel your interactions and kind of help sharpen your ability to connect and empathise with people. And you mentioned a few other courses that you did. And so do you think that integrating different disciplines into your osteopathic practice can be a positive thing for osteopathy in general moving forward?
Yes. Yes, I do. But I think it's a question of making sure that it's with reason. And what I mean by that is it's sometimes easy to, I'm going to do this Emperor's New Clothes kind of scenario when actually it's not changing that much, but it's just a different way of it's
just sharpening the tools that you might already be using.
Yeah, I think and I think sometimes it's easy to kind of think, oh well, I have to do that because of X, Y, and Z, but actually, do you know what you were doing was great. Might give you a slightly different way, but actually sometimes what you're doing is great and enough. But I think if you can integrate stuff that benefit it rather than dilute it, because I think there are osteopaths I know where they've done sort of homeopathy, and they've gone down the route that they've moved so far away from osteopathy that certain trait has taken over. Then my view is you've kind of migrated to a homeopath rather than an osteopath. So I think as long as it's done in the right way to balance and promote your osteopathic practice, then fine. I think the moment it starts to take over, then you've got to start to think about why the rationale behind it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, with your vast experience as an osteopath and all these different facets.
I just experienced.
What kind of advice would you give to younger students and manual therapists who are currently either studying or young graduates?
Don't give your tutors too hard a time. Be nice to them.
Noted.
Be nice to them. They are trying their best. I think. Do you know what? I just think never stop scratching that itch. Okay, if you have an itch, go and find out about it. I think just because I say something, don't necessarily take it as gospel, as in the sense of, in my experience, it will. And I know you guys probably will get frustrated with the word depends. And the word depends does come up an awful lot, and it still will. And I think whatever you're doing, it depends. Even in medicine, in terms of prescriptive medicine or elective surgery, there's still a depends. And I was actually talking to one of the research chaps over the weekend about some interesting research studies where they've done knee operations where they've incised and sedated. 50% they've done the operation, 50% they actually haven't. All they've done is the first bit, and the recovery rate's the same. Shoulder decompression is the same, and you kind of think, okay, well, why is that? And I think there's so much more that we, certainly from a psychological perspective, we leave untapped, that actually we can explore more. And that's personally where I would like to look at, is the more kind of psychological element of treatment, because I think what we do is amazing. I think we could enhance that more, and I think possibly, is it a question I want to enhance it by doing something slightly different with a little tweak here, from a technique perspective, or actually do I want to think, okay, what other bits can I build onto this from a psychological perspective that will enhance that even more? And I think it's understanding the perceptions of people as well. So I think when I alluded to the fact about my kind of late 20s, when I was kind of losing a little bit of empathy, some patient were coming, for a really bad day. Oh, what's wrong? Oh, I had a flat tyre. Really? And you kind of go, is that it? But actually, do you know what? To them, that could be a major thing. just because to me it wouldn't be, and I could change it. To them, they might not be able to change a tyre, or they might not have a spare tyre, or they might be running late for something, or whatever. And actually, the impact of that is just learning to think. And I think always putting yourself in the receiving end of that scenario would certainly enhance. So I kind of forgotten your question, but yes, I think as long as it promotes osteopathic practice, yes, I'm all for people developing as much as they possibly can.
Mm-hmm. So you're almost taking with the psychological aspect, you're almost taking a treatment that works very well and then almost adding like a little placebo extra bonus on top of it. That is,
yeah, whether it's placebo or not, I don't know. I think it's we've all had those scenarios where you say to someone, "You're right, I'm fine." Oh, now on the face value, you go, "All right, okay, you're fine." Now I'd look at it and go, "Okay, was that a fine? I am actually fine, or is that a fine? I want to tell you I'm irritated, but I'm not going to." And I think looking at it from that perspective is, and looking at the sort of or the verbalization of people's language around what they're saying, to me is or the reason why they're saying it is the kind of the element that's more of interest to me. And I think we have such an impact, and I don't necessarily think it's necessarily purely a placebo. I think there's an element of development there that people can utilise for their own benefit.
Placebo as a word, obviously meaning that you're applying a treatment and then it works, even if it doesn't have any backing that it does work.
Yeah.
It is actually working. But what I mean by that is like placebo-like effects, where you're amplifying the effects of something that...
Yeah, I think, I know where you're going. Yeah, I know what you mean. I just wonder whether... it's like anything. For example, if you turn around, and maybe my old teacher said it at school, where you think, "Oh, I wouldn't do German for GCSE, you're not very good at it." Whether he actually meant that, or whether he did it as a way to spur me on and go and do well at it, I don't know. But it worked, do you know what I mean? But whether he realised he was utilising a placebo or not, I don't know. But it's just, I guess, I find language totally amazing. And the way people write things and the way interpret things. And I think, I'm going to sound like a real old man, which I am, but two-dimensional text or WhatsApp or email, I think is probably one of the most, is one of the things I dislike, because there's no inference, there's no inflection, there's no meaning, there's no kind of construct of what you're having that discussion. And it can be taken and interpreted by the reader so many different ways than it was meant by the writer. And sometimes people just want to talk, and if that's a placebo effect, then fine, fair enough. But no, I do think we need to I feel we need to look more at psychology in and around our treatments and rationales, rather than actually sometimes necessarily what we're doing. The two they can't be unique housemates.
Absolutely. When you mentioned that you did that counselling course, I thought, yes, it seems so obvious when you say it, but that should almost be part of this degree in a way,
I mean, I would love to. When I was a student, we did psychology as part of the first year, and I think the psychological impact that manifests itself in the musculoskeletal system is massive and huge, and I think it's learning to sort of be aware of it, not necessarily understanding it, because we're not trained psychologists, but it's being aware of that and also offering potential avenues for those individuals that you can see that it might be an issue, and I think it's something we certainly need to be aware of. And And I think with the mindfulness courses and stuff like that, I think there's huge benefit to being aware of stuff like that. And I think really it's part of our responsibility to be aware of the psychological demands that we have on ourselves and on our patients, and especially with all the social media and the kind of the conformities that are required or perceived by people. Oh, I need to be posting this. No, you don't. You don't need to be posting the fact that you had an omelette for lunch. The fact that, do you know what I mean? Oh, I'm going to the gym. You don't need to post all that. But there's a need or desire to want to be almost inclusive. And it goes back to that book about Desmond Tutu. He was doing a chat in Rwanda, and he was talking to a football stadium full of Tutsis and Hutus, and obviously they'd had the massive genocide between the two tribes. And he said, "How am I going to?" There's a palpable kind of tone in the stadium. He said, "How am I going to relate to these people without it creating more division?" So he said, "I started talking to people about two sets of people that started having fights because of the size and differences of their nose." And he said the whole football stadium was laughing at how ridiculous that was, to go to war over the size of your nose. And after about 5 minutes, they started to realise actually he was talking about them. And, I don't know why we do it as humans. We try and split ourselves off into whatever different cultures, religions, races, etc., which is fine. But let's try and also come together as one of 7 billion people, because, it's like with football. Well, I hate them because they're Tottenham. What? Okay, it's just another football team. Do you know what I mean? It's like, but we do try and segregate ourselves, and I don't know why people like to be in exclusive groups, but then go, well, actually, it's not working because they don't interact with us. Well, no. Why don't they? Because you're as guilty as everybody is to try and kind of pull yourself apart. Think about it. We're one of 7 billion on this planet, and we're all the same. We're just different. We might have different beliefs, we might have different religions, skin colour, whatever it might be, but underneath it all, we're all the same. So the moment we can start to think like that, I think we can then start to have a better environment for everyone to actually live and work. But it's a bit deep.
As soon as we realise that we're all operating a skin suit with the same muscles, the bones, all of that thing. So the experience of being human is inherently similar. It's just the experiences that you have are different.
Yeah, exactly.
This is why I've really enjoyed even just the first year, just kind of going inside of the body, and just because I did anthropology before I came here, and that was the complete opposite. That was insisting on, I guess, making connections between communities, but mostly seeing what made them unique. And huge shift, obviously, but I've found it so inspiring and fulfilling to, I guess just on a daily basis, remind yourself that we are all exactly the same.
Yeah, we all have our unique qualities, don't get me wrong, we all have our unique qualities and our unique differences, and I think we need to be aware of those differences, but also I think we need to be able to embrace those differences, and but embrace them as one, as in like a complete community, and no one is better or worse than anyone else, and the life choices you make are equally as important as the life choices I make, or the decisions, whatever it might be. And I think, I might wear an orange t-shirt today, and to some person that might signify something, but actually no, it's just because it was an orange t-shirt. Do you know what I mean? And it's just, let's just stop trying to isolate and let's embrace everything. And I think, I don't know. That's my view anyway.
That's beautiful.
That was lovely, thank you. Also, what kind of experience have you had when seeking osteopathic treatment? And has that spurred you on and taught you some approaches that have gone into your own treatment?
I've experienced a number of different osteopaths. Some maybe not quite so beneficial to me than others. I thought very carefully about how I framed that one.
I see your eyes just thinking.
and I think, do you know what? Any kind of therapy that you have is a very individual thing. And I think that even works with, medication as well. I think, some people will get on with some medications and others won't. And I think, I think it's remembering that you've got a choice, and I think it's remembering that actually, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't necessarily mean that modality doesn't work for you, but actually it might be that protagonist of that modality. So therefore, I think it's a question of finding what works for you, and I think that's where, going back to the comment about having what's the word I'm looking for? Associates. Your patients will want to see you because they've become accustomed to you and they know that what you do works for them. But I think the biggest, going back to your earlier question about what do you see as some of the challenges when you're newly qualified, I think one of the big challenges is understanding and knowing your limitations. And I think it's all very easy to come out thinking, I'm going to heal the world and I'm the best osteopath since sliced bread. You might well be, but we can't do everything to all people. So I think it's being able to understand, actually, do you know what, this isn't right for me to treat, or this is outside my scope, or actually it's not working. And I do know I run my practice very openly. It is very open, to be fair. And when I first see a patient, I will turn around and say, if we're not seeing a change within 2 to 3 sessions, then we need to have a rethink. And I do know other practices where it's kind of 6 to 10 before they start to see a difference, or might see a difference. That's their prerogative. However, I think, if it's not making a difference within that time, clearly I'm not working within the right remit for you as a patient, and therefore we're not gelling. And I think that's the way I've always done it, is the fact of, if you feel a benefit and I'm seeing a benefit and we're working together, then fine, let's continue. If you're not seeing something, or I'm not seeing something, let's have that conversation and then put a plan B together. And I think, that's kind of how I try to look at things. Learning to know when not to push a situation, or your knowing your limitations.
I think that's really smart, and it also builds trust with patients, because they know that you're not just taking them for a ride, and you really have their best interest at heart, which is that's a really interesting.
And
approach.
Also, I'd never get people to go, oh, have a course of 10. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. That's your prerogative if you want to run your business that way. That's totally your way. However, my concern with that, from a personal perspective, is, will they need 10? If they're going to pay, am I kind of enticing them? Am I moulding their head to go, well, I have to come because I've got 10? Am I putting my business preference on them to say, I want your money up front, but I'm going to give you a discount? Is that right for me to entice them that way? Is it for me, is it ethically correct for me to entice them that way? If, let's say, after 4 treatments, they're not getting better, okay, obviously you've got to refund that money. So personally, and I'm purely talking personally, and I'm not saying there's anything right or wrong with that business model. For me, I'd rather go each step, because then that trust is there.
Wonderful. And moving forward, would you be comfortable sharing with us any professional or even personal goals that you have?
Ooh.
Reflective practice.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to run a race on Saturday and win the race on Sunday. That would be great. Do you know what I would? I've been 10 months in this role now, deputy unit leader, and I'm loving it actually, and working with a great team, and I would love to be more involved in sort of where we are taking the university, even more so. So personally, I would love to get my sort of self more engrossed, more engrossed in sort of university direction. I'd also love to learn how to speak properly, and from a practice perspective, yeah, do you know, I think I want to just make sure that my patients are comfortable with what they're getting, and I want to make sure that my skill set is developing in whichever shape, size or direction that means. There is no kind of I want to go down that route or that route. It's very much right, okay, what are we looking to achieve, where are we looking to go from a profession perspective, and I just want to keep helping students to reach their potential, but when they qualify, they're adding value to the profession rather than just graduating people from that perspective. I want people to try and help drive the profession forward.
That's cool. Thank you for that. And lastly, have you got anything that you would like to plug or bring up to advertise, since we've so you got Pro Clinic still?
Pro Clinic, yeah, that's down in Surrey. That's a practice down in Surrey. To be fair, I am pretty booked up, so there is a bit of a wait.
But because he's very good.
Worthwhile wait.
Or, you know, to be fair, if anybody's on the motorsport front and needs any support, any races, feel free to get in touch as well. Working kind of anything up to 24-hour racing experience across anywhere. So there's not really many formulas I haven't worked in apart from Formula 1. So if anybody wants any help on that, both from a trackside support or indeed other sort of driver support, let us know. I can either put you in touch with the right people or we can sort something out.
Okay, cool. We'll leave all contact details in the comments below.
Cool.
Right, thank you very much for coming.
No worries, thanks very much.
Cheers. That was wonderful.
That was great.
And we will see you on the next episode of Table Talk.